My name is Sienna Hart, and I was 31 when the night I thought would deepen my future instead showed me I had almost chained myself to the wrong man. For a long time, I kept replaying that Tuesday in my head, searching for some warning I had missed, some tremor in his voice, some hesitation in the way he kissed me goodbye that morning. Something. But that was the cruelest part of it. There had been nothing obviously broken when the day began, nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just a woman in love, leaving for work with a calm heart, believing she was heading toward a beautiful evening with the man she was supposed to marry. His name was Mason. He was 29, and we had been together for 4 years, engaged for 6 months. Our anniversary that week mattered to me for reasons I probably should have questioned even then. It wasn't just the anniversary of our relationship, it was the anniversary of the night he proposed. Same restaurant, same table, same memory I had polished in my mind until it gleamed. So I planned around it carefully. I called in a favor from the steakhouse manager, an old college acquaintance, to get the exact table back. I locked in the reservation weeks early. I put it on both our calendars. I bought Mason a blazer he had been eyeing, but said was too expensive for one dinner. I even had something tucked in my purse that night. Papers for a ring upgrade consultation I was going to surprise him with after dessert. He had dropped enough hints over the last 2 months that I convinced myself it was romantic, that this was what building a future looked like. That Tuesday morning, he kissed me on his way out of the bedroom and smiled like he meant it. "See you at 7:30, he said. "Can't wait." I remember smiling back. "So you do remember." He laughed softly and brushed my arm. "Of course I remember." That was the last sincere-sounding thing he said to me all day. At 5 o'clock, I texted him before leaving the office. "Leaving now. Love you." He answered fast. "Love you too. Getting ready now." I should have known a quick reply could still be a lie. By 7:20, I was already at the restaurant. The champagne was chilling. The lights were low and flattering. A vase of his favorite flowers sat in the center of the table, and Carlos, the same waiter who had served us the night Mason proposed, actually recognized me before he understood why I was there alone. "Special night again?" he asked with a warm smile. "Yeah," I said, "anniversary." He nodded, pleased for us, and walked away before he could see the first crack in my expression. 7:30 came and went. Then 7:45. Then 8. At first, I told myself traffic. Then maybe a last-minute call. Then maybe he had spilled something on the blazer and needed to change. The human mind is generous when it wants to protect itself. It builds 10 harmless explanations before it lets one ugly truth through the door. At 8:02, I texted him. "Hey, are you running late?" The message showed as read. No reply. At 8:15, I called. It rang twice, then the call was declined. That was the moment my stomach dropped. If he had been driving, it would have rung out. If something had happened, he wouldn't have actively rejected me. A declined call is a decision. Small, clean, intentional. Carlos came by once, then again, each time trying to be polite without making my humiliation heavier than it already was. "Would you like us to hold the kitchen a little longer?" "Yes," I said the first time. The second time, I just shook my head. By 8:45, I paid for untouched champagne, forced a smile that felt brittle in my own face, and walked out alone, carrying flowers that suddenly looked ridiculous. Outside, the air felt colder than it should have. I sat in my car for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel, staring forward, not crying yet, because some part of me still wanted this to be explainable. It wasn't. When I got home, the house was dark. His car wasn't in the driveway. The blazer I bought him was still hanging in the closet with the tag on it. That detail hit harder than I expected. It meant he had never intended to come. He hadn't dressed and changed his mind. He hadn't been delayed. He had looked at the evening I built for us and stepped around it. Then I saw the iPad. Mason used it for everything. Sketches, shopping, workout plans, messages. He was attached to it in a way that was almost childish, and somehow he had left it on the kitchen counter that morning. I noticed it only because it lit up and made that soft notification sound in the quiet house. I should have ignored it. I know that. But there are moments when your life is standing on a seam and instinct reaches before etiquette does. A message preview flashed across the screen from someone saved as Ava. I knew that name. Ava was his ex-girlfriend. He had once told me they had ended things long before we met and barely spoke anymore. He had said it with the practiced casualness people use when they want dishonesty to sound harmless. My hand went cold before I even picked up the device. The messages were already open when the screen unlocked. The thread stretched back 2 months. At first, it read like nostalgia disguised as friendliness. "Hey stranger, miss talking to you. Remember that weekend at the lake? You always understood me better than anyone. Then it shifted. You still on for Tuesday? Yes. Can't wait. Haven't seen your new place yet. I'll make it worth the wait. I told Sienna our anniversary is next week anyway. I read that line 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, because I understood it perfectly. He had not forgotten. He had moved it. In his own version of reality, he had simply shifted our anniversary out of the way so he could spend the real one with her. The last message had come in less than an hour earlier. Almost there. Traffic was crazy. Start without me. I sat down at the kitchen table with the iPad still in my hands and felt the room change around me. It wasn't dramatic. No glass shattered. No screaming. Just a silence so complete it felt like all the softness had been vacuumed out of my life in one pull. 4 years. 6 months engaged. Wedding plans. Deposits. Promises. And on the night I was sitting under warm restaurant lights waiting for him to choose me, he was driving to another woman's apartment and joking about me like I was some scheduling inconvenience. I didn't call him again. I didn't text. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop. Because once the fantasy died, the numbers came into focus first. The first thing I checked was the lease. Both our names were on it, but that document no longer scared me the way it might have a few hours earlier. I had been covering the rent alone for months while Mason chased one half-built business idea after another and called it momentum. Our landlord knew the truth. He knew the payments came from me. He also knew that if the relationship ended, I was the tenant he wanted to keep. That mattered. Then I opened the folder with our wedding contracts. Venue, photographer, caterer, DJ florals, chairs, lighting, cake. All of it sat there like a paper monument to a future that had just been exposed as fiction. His name was on some of the forms as the groom. Mine was the name attached to the card being charged. I stared at the totals for a long moment. Thousands already gone. Weeks of planning, calls, tastings, site visits, guest list drafts, seating chart arguments, late-night compromises. I should have felt grief first. Instead, what I felt was clarity. The kind that arrives not when you stop loving someone, but when you finally see that love has been doing all the labor by itself. So I started sending emails, one by one, to the venue first. Need to cancel the Heartwalker wedding reservation. Effective immediately. Then the photographer. Please cancel the June booking. Then the caterer. We will no longer need services. Process whatever cancellation applies under contract. Then the DJ. Then the florist. Then the rental company. Each email was short, professional, and final. No explanation. No emotional leakage. No hedging. I didn't need drama. The facts were enough. A wedding between 2 people only exists if 2 people are actually in it. By then, I already knew I was the only one who had shown up. Most of the deposits were non-refundable. By the time I finished, I had effectively burned through around $8,000. I sat back in my chair and let that number land. $8,000 for the truth. $8,000 to stop myself from walking into a marriage with a man who could lie this smoothly on a night he knew mattered. $8,000 to interrupt a disaster before it got legal. There are more expensive ways to ruin your life. After that, I started packing. Not in a rage. That's the part people always expect when they hear the story. Broken frames, slashed clothes, shattered dishes. But fury wasn't what moved through me that night. It was something colder, more focused. His gym clothes, folded. Toiletries, zipped into a bag. The watch I bought him for his birthday last year, set aside with the things that were technically gifts and no longer mine to reclaim. His cables, chargers, shoes, belts, cologne, hoodies, and that ugly ceramic mug his sister made him one Christmas that I had always hated but washed carefully anyway because he loved it. I wrapped the framed photo of his grandparents so it wouldn't break. I boxed the blender he insisted he needed for protein shakes and then barely used. Even the little things, the stray cufflinks in the junk drawer, the receipts by the door, the paperback novel he had abandoned halfway through. Around midnight, confirmations started coming in. Venue canceled. Photographer canceled. Caterer acknowledged cancellation. DJ confirmed release. Each message felt less like revenge and more like documentation, a paper trail of reality replacing the fantasy he had been living in. Then I checked our shared calendar. There it was, the anniversary reminder I had added 3 weeks earlier. 7:30 p.m., steakhouse reservation. The same date, the same time, sitting in plain sight like proof that he had not made a mistake. He had made a choice. I screenshotted it. Then I left the phone on the table beside the iPad. Evidence did not need emotion. It just needed to exist. At around 4:15, I heard his car pull into the driveway. The sound was soft at first, tires rolling slow, engine cutting off. Then a car door closing carefully. Not the loud, careless slam of someone coming home where he belonged. The quieter movement of someone trying not to be noticed. I stayed on the couch. The living room was dim except for the lamp beside me. Boxes were stacked around my feet. A few more lined the hallway. Not chaotic, just undeniable. The front door eased open. Mason stepped inside carrying his shoes in one hand. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was messy in that too familiar way that used to look intimate to me and now looked cheap. He froze the second he saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then his eyes moved from me to the boxes, then back to me again. "What are you doing?" he asked. I looked at the clock on the wall first, then back at him. "Packing your things at 4 a.m. His expression shifted. Surprise first, then irritation. "Are you serious right now?" I leaned back against the couch cushion. Interesting question from someone just getting home. His jaw tightened. "I was with friends." "At Simone's?" I asked. He nodded too fast. "Yeah, we lost track of time." I picked up the iPad from the coffee table and held it up. "You left this." The blood drained from his face so quickly, it was almost fascinating. He didn't ask what I had seen. That told me enough. His eyes flicked toward the device and then away again. "You went through my messages?" He said it like that was the injury. "I waited for you at the restaurant for over an hour," I said. "I called. You declined it. Then I came home to an empty house, your untouched blazer, and messages from your ex-girlfriend saying she couldn't wait to see your new place. So yes, Mason, I looked." He dragged a hand through his hair, already scrambling. "It's not what it looks like." I gave a quiet laugh, but there was no warmth in it. "Really? Because it looks like you told Ava our anniversary was next week, so you could spend the actual night with her." He stepped forward, voice lowering, trying for calm. "We were just talking." "Until 4 a.m? It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pivoted. "You had no right to invade my privacy." There it was, the redirect. I stood up then, slowly, and handed him the manila folder from the coffee table. He frowned and took it. Inside were printed confirmations from every vendor. Venue cancellation, catering cancellation, photography cancellation, DJ cancellation, deposit terms, time-stamped emails. He flipped through the pages once, then again, his expression slipping from confusion into something closer to fear. "What is this?" "Our wedding is canceled." He looked up so fast it was almost childish. "You canceled our wedding?" I held his gaze. "What wedding?" His mouth fell open. "You do not get to disappear on our anniversary, lie to my face, sleep with your ex, and come back here asking me what I'm doing. Whatever this was supposed to be, it's over." His breathing changed. I could hear it. "You're insane," he said. "You can't just do that without talking to me." "I tried talking to you," I said. "At 8:15. You declined the call." "That doesn't prove anything." I picked up my phone, opened the photo I had saved, and held it out. Last year's Instagram post, his own account, the same date, the same restaurant, the caption under the proposal photo, 1 year engaged to the love of my life. Then the screenshot of the shared calendar reminder. Then the message thread. He looked at all three, and for the first time that night, his face emptied in a way that felt real. He sank down onto one of the boxed containers near the wall. "Oh my God." I said nothing. He pressed both hands over his mouth, then dropped them again, speaking faster now. "Sienna, listen to me. I told Ava it was next week because it was easier to lie to her that way?" I asked. He stared at me. Then, unbelievably, he tried one more turn. "You should have reminded me." For a second, I just looked at him. "I did remind you," I said. 3 weeks ago. I put it on the calendar. I booked the table. I bought you a blazer. I texted you before I left work. You told me you were getting ready." He swallowed, but his pride was still trying to survive. "I've been stressed." "So have I. Wedding planning has been a lot." That almost made me laugh again. "What wedding planning, Mason? The one where I paid for everything while you flirted with your ex?" His eyes hardened then. "Nothing happened." I folded my arms. "You do not get to define betrayal that narrowly." He stood, voice sharper now. "You're blowing this up because you're insecure." "No," I said quietly. "I'm ending it because now I'm informed." That landed. You could see it in the way he stopped moving, in the way his mouth opened, but produced nothing useful. He had expected tears, maybe begging, maybe a fight chaotic enough to blur responsibility. What he had not expected was the simple, terrifying steadiness of a woman who had already adjusted to the loss before he walked in the door. I pointed toward the hallway. "Most of your things are packed. The rest will be done by morning." "You're throwing me out?" "I'm removing you from the life you already left." He stared at me for a long second, then at the boxes again, and something in his posture finally shifted. Not into remorse, not fully, just into the dawning realization that consequences had started without waiting for his permission. By morning, the silence in the apartment felt different. Not heavy anymore, just clean. Mason didn't stay the night. After pacing, arguing in circles, and trying one last time to twist the situation into something survivable, he grabbed a duffel bag and left some time before sunrise. He said he needed space, that we both needed to calm down. I didn't correct him, because for the first time in 4 years, I wasn't confused about what was happening between us. It wasn't a fight. It was an ending. The entitlement showed up faster than I expected. By mid-morning, I had already received 3 missed calls from an unknown number and 1 voicemail. I didn't listen to it. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and checked for any vendor responses I might have missed. Everything was confirmed. Everything was done. Around 11, my phone rang again. This time I picked up. "Sienna?" a woman's voice said, sharp, protective. "Who is this?" "It's Harper, Mason's sister." Of course it was. "What did you do to him?" she demanded. "He showed up here last night completely wrecked. He said you canceled the wedding and threw him out." I let a small pause sit between us. "I didn't do anything to him," I said calmly. "He spent our anniversary night with his ex." Silence. A beat. Then another. When Harper spoke again, her tone had changed. "He said it was a misunderstanding. Something about dates." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I replied. "He told her our anniversary was next week, so he could see her on the actual night." Another pause. Longer this time. "Oh," she said quietly. That one word told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't expected that version. "I'm not calling to argue with you," I added. "But I'm also not going to defend myself for ending an engagement built on lies." Harper exhaled slowly. "Yeah," she said, I get it." We ended the call without drama. Wednesday was when I stopped reacting and started observing. Mason texted from a different number. "We need to talk." I didn't respond. Then another message. "This is being blown out of proportion." Still nothing. By the afternoon, I got in my car and parked a block away from our apartment. Not because I was hoping he'd come back, because I knew he would. Sure enough, just after 3, his car pulled up. He got out, looking around like someone who still believed he had a right to be there. He let himself in with his key. I watched from down the street. 10 minutes later, he came out carrying another bag. Then another. Then a box. But what caught my attention wasn't what he was taking. It was where he went next. He didn't drive toward his sister's place. He turned the opposite direction. I waited a few seconds, then pulled out and followed at a distance. Not close enough to be obvious. Just enough to confirm what I already suspected. He drove straight across town, straight to a familiar apartment complex, and parked. I didn't need to see him walk inside. I already knew. That was the moment something shifted inside me completely. Not because it hurt more, but because it hurt less. Clarity does that. Thursday morning, he tried again. This time, he called from Harper's phone. I answered. "Sienna, we need to talk about the wedding deposits." I almost smiled. "Of course." "What about them?" I asked. "I want half back." There it was. The audacity, fully formed. "Half of what?" I said, keeping my tone even. "The deposits," he snapped. "You canceled everything without consulting me. That money is ours. I should be reimbursed." I let a quiet second pass. "You were at your ex-girlfriend's apartment on our anniversary." "For the last time, nothing happened." "Then why lie about where you were?" "Because I knew you'd react like this." He shot back immediately. "Lie. Get caught. Blame the reaction." "I paid for everything," I said. "My card, my accounts, my name on the receipts." "That doesn't matter," he insisted. "We were getting married. That's shared financial territory." "No," I said. "That was shared intention. The finances were mine." "You're financially abusing me," he said, voice rising. "You can't just cut me off like this." I exhaled slowly. "That's not abuse, Mason. That's consequences." He went quiet for a second. Then he hung up. 20 minutes later, I got a notification. A payment request. $4,000. From him. "Note, my half of wedding deposits you stole." I stared at it for a long moment, then declined it, blocked the account, and set my phone down. Friday was when he made his biggest mistake. He tried to control the narrative. He posted a long, carefully worded message about toxic relationships, about control, about red flags, about how he had dodged a bullet by escaping a woman who was threatened by his friendships and reacted with extreme behavior. At first, the comments were exactly what he wanted. Supportive, sympathetic. But clean stories don't survive contact with details. One of our mutual friends, Cody, commented, "Wait, didn't you miss your anniversary dinner to hang out with your ex?" Another comment followed. "Thought you told people the anniversary was next week?" Then another. Screenshots started appearing. Not from me. I didn't need to do anything. The tone shifted. Questions turned into doubt. Doubt turned into accusation. Within an hour, the post was gone. Deleted. But it was too late. That night, I got a message from someone I didn't know. Her name was Natalie. Hi, this is going to sound strange, but were you engaged to Mason? I stared at the screen, then replied, yes. There was a pause. Then another message. Was he with Ava on Tuesday night? I didn't hesitate. Yes. The reply came almost instantly. I thought so. My stomach tightened slightly. Not because I was surprised, because I knew exactly what that meant. Natalie sent one more message. I think we should talk. We met the next morning. A small cafe on the corner of a quiet street. Neutral ground. I got there first. Natalie arrived 5 minutes later. She wasn't what I expected. No tears, no frantic energy. She looked composed, sharp, like someone who had already processed the shock and moved straight into strategy. You're Sienna, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. I am. I'm Natalie. I nodded. Then she placed her phone on the table. I'm going to be direct, she said. Ava has been seeing my brother. I felt something in my chest shift. There it was. The missing piece that fixed the entire ugly picture. She told him Mason was just an old mistake she was finally closing the door on, Natalie continued. Clearly that wasn't true. I let out a slow breath. No, it wasn't. I showed her everything. The messages, the timeline, the anniversary dinner, the cancellations, the screenshots. She didn't interrupt. She just watched, occasionally tightening her jaw in a way that told me she was filing everything away. When I finished, she leaned back slightly. He told my brother he had nothing to worry about, she said, that Mason was just someone from the past. I gave a small, humorless smile. And Mason told me Ava was someone from the past, too. Natalie gave a sharp nod. So they matched each other's lies. There was something almost surreal about sitting there, comparing them piece by piece. Not competing. Not blaming each other. Just aligning the truth. What are you going to do? I asked. Natalie picked up her coffee, took a slow sip, then set it back down. He doesn't know I know yet. That's usually when they're the most comfortable, I said. Exactly. Her eyes met mine again. I want to handle this right. I studied her for a moment. You seem like you will. Later that afternoon, everything began to unravel. Not loudly. Not all at once. But in precise, controlled movements. Mason texted me again. This time the message was different. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. I didn't respond. An hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. This is Ava. Her voice was tight. Controlled, but barely. What did you tell her? She demanded. There was no greeting. Just panic wrapped in anger. She asked me a question, I said calmly. I answered it. You had no right. I had every right, I cut in. Just like you had every right to invite my fiancé over on our anniversary. Silence. Then, you're being vindictive. I almost smiled. No, I'm being honest. You just ruined everything, she snapped. I let that sit for a second. Then replied evenly, no, you did that when you agreed to lie with him. She hung up. The fallout hit fast after that. By evening, Mason was calling me nonstop. Different numbers. Back to back. I didn't answer any of them. Eventually, one message came through that I couldn't ignore. She told him he kicked Ava out. I read it once, then again, then set the phone down. A few minutes later, it rang again. I answered this time. Sienna, Mason's voice came through, strained and unstable. What did you do? There it was. Not what happened. Not what he did. What did you do? I told the truth, I said. He confronted her, he said, pacing on the other end. I could hear it. Everything blew up. That sounds like a problem you should have thought about before. You didn't have to get involved, he snapped. He asked Natalie questions. Natalie asked me questions. I answered them. This is messed up, Sienna. No, I said softly. This is accurate. His breathing was uneven now. You just destroyed everything. I let the silence stretch long enough for that to land. No, I repeated. You destroyed it when you started lying. Another pause. Then his voice dropped. Where am I supposed to go? I looked around my apartment, at the space that finally felt like mine again. Not here. I hung up. By Saturday, the situation had turned from messy to unsustainable. Harper called once more, sounding more tired than angry. He's been bouncing between places, she said. Nobody wants to keep cleaning up after him. I didn't say anything, because there wasn't anything to say. That evening, Mason posted again. A longer message this time. More emotional, more calculated. About how he had been in a toxic dynamic where he felt pressured and controlled. How canceling the wedding without discussion was financial abuse. How he had been emotionally manipulated. For a moment it worked. Then it didn't. More screenshots resurfaced. More people chimed in. Friends who had been at last year's anniversary dinner. Friends who had seen the calendar invites. Friends who had heard him talk about the plans. The tone shifted again. Questions turned into accusations. Accusations turned into clarity. Within the hour, the post was gone. Again. That night, I got another message from Natalie. It's done. I stared at those 2 words, then replied, "What happened?" Her response came a minute later. My brother ended it with Ava. Apparently, Mason wasn't the only one she was stringing along. I exhaled slowly. Of course. Natalie sent one more message. My brother's devastated. But honestly, he should have asked harder questions sooner. I looked at that line for a long time, because it applied to more than one man. By Sunday, the fallout had reached a point where even Mason couldn't pretend anymore. He called me again. I didn't answer. He texted instead. "We need to fix this." I read it, then locked my phone, because there was nothing left to fix. Later that evening, I heard through Harper, who had shifted from defensive to quietly apologetic, that Mason had tried one last desperate move. He went back to Ava, tried to stay there, tried to salvage something, anything. But that didn't last long either, because by then, her lies had caught up to her too. That was the moment the entire structure finally collapsed. Not just the relationships, but the illusion that any of it had been real. Because what Mason had chased was never stability, never commitment, never even love. It was attention. And once that illusion broke, there was nothing left for him to stand on. By the time everything settled, it didn't feel like an explosion. It felt like aftermath. Quiet. Still. Final. I didn't hear from Mason for a few days. Not because he didn't try. Because I stopped engaging completely. Blocked numbers. Ignored unknown calls. Let every message sit unanswered until they eventually stopped coming. And they did stop. Because when there's no audience left, even the most persistent chaos runs out of energy. The next time I heard anything about him, it wasn't from him. It was from Harper. I ran into her at a grocery store late one afternoon. Not planned. Not dramatic. Just one of those moments life arranges without asking. We both paused for a second when we recognized each other. There was a flicker of awkwardness. Then she gave a small, tired smile. Hey. We stood there for a moment, neither of us rushing to fill the silence. Then she spoke. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I tilted my head slightly. For what? For how I came at you, she said. I didn't know everything yet. I nodded once. You were protecting your brother. She let out a quiet breath. Yeah, well, turns out he didn't deserve it. There was no bitterness in her voice, just resignation. What's he doing now? I asked. She gave a small, almost disbelieving laugh. Trying to figure that out. I waited. She continued. He tried to go back to Ava after everything blew up. I wasn't surprised. And? She shut that down too, Harper said. Apparently he wasn't the only one she was juggling. There it was. The final piece. Not shocking. Just inevitable. Later that night, my phone lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't open it. But something told me I should. It was Mason. I know you'll probably delete this. I didn't. I read every word. I messed up. That felt small. Like trying to contain a wildfire in a sentence. I kept reading. I threw away 4 years for 2 months of attention from someone who was lying just as hard as I was. I paused there, because that part was real. Not polished. Not defensive. Just honest in a way he hadn't been before. Harper told me about the ring upgrade. I closed my eyes briefly. That detail still sat somewhere deep, untouched. I didn't know. I didn't know you were planning that. I'm sorry. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know. I stared at the message for a long time. Long enough to feel everything I needed to feel. And then nothing. No anger. No urge to respond. No lingering attachment pulling me back. Just a quiet understanding that whatever we had already ended days ago. This message didn't change that. It just confirmed it. I locked my phone. Didn't reply. The next morning, I went back to the jeweler. The ring upgrade he had been hinting about? I returned it. Didn't hesitate. Didn't second guess. Just handed it over and watched the transaction reverse like the rest of that future had. With the money, I booked a solo trip. Somewhere I had always wanted to go, but never made time for. Because I was too busy building a life around someone else. This time I chose differently. A week later, I stood alone in a place that didn't know my past. Cold air. Wide open space. No expectations. No shared history. Just me. For the first time in a long time, everything felt light. Not because nothing had happened, but because I had finally stopped carrying something that was never meant to last. Back home, the apartment felt different. Not empty. Peaceful. His things were gone. His noise. His half-finished plans. His constant almosts. Replaced by something quieter. Something solid. A few weeks later, life moved forward in small, unremarkable ways. Work. Coffee. Books. Normal things that suddenly felt meaningful again. That's when I met Daniel. Not dramatic. Not intense. Just steady. We started talking after a book club meeting, then again the next week, then again. No rush, no pressure, no games. Just someone who showed up when he said he would, who didn't make promises feel like negotiations, who didn't need reminders to care. One night, over dinner, he asked me a simple question. Do anniversaries matter to you? I smiled. Yeah, I said, they do. He nodded like that made perfect sense. And that was it. No tension. No explanation needed. Just understanding. I heard one last update about Mason months later, through Harper again. He moved back to his hometown, working at his dad's hardware store. Off social media, keeping things quiet. As for Ava, I didn't ask. Didn't need to. Because by then, none of them had anything to do with me anymore. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. The money, the cancellations, the way everything ended so suddenly. I always give them the same answer. No, because what I lost was never real in the first place. And what I kept was myself. The locks changed that night, but it wasn't just the apartment. It was everything. And honestly, best $8,000 I ever spent.